You thought you bought a surveillance system, but what you actually bought was a long-term evidence locker, and it's not one that you have access to all the time. Today, we're going to talk about these specific surveillance cameras that are brought to you by companies like Ring, Google, and Wyze, and how they're not all you might think they are. They're actually not just cameras to keep you safe, they're actually data storage that you pay for the privilege to access, while companies continue to collect your information for a lot of different purposes. Thanks for joining us. My name is Frank Downs, and as always, I'm here with Dustin Brewer, and we are Legitimate Cybersecurity. And today we're talking about these cameras, these cloud subscriptions, and what you can do to use them effectively and safely in your everyday life. So, Dustin, we were talking, and what I think is super interesting is that a lot of people think they bought a safety item, right? Something that'll keep them safe, something that'll make
Yeah.
sure there's, no prowlers or anything like that. And to an extent, I suppose they did. But when you think about it, it's not just video. It's not just information that's keeping you safe. It's more like you bought a workflow. You bought into a workflow. You bought into a collective data set. You don't even really own the footage. And what it actually is you're kind of being presented, I'd say, this UI that makes you feel like you have some type of ownership with this information, but you really don't. What has your experience been with these types of systems, and how do you use them in your daily life?
Yeah. So I think this all comes back down to like the move away from like ownership models into subscription models, right? And we've seen this happen before. Like, for example, folks watching us on YouTube, if you have YouTube Music or Apple Music or anything, you don't own any of the stuff you're downloading. You lease it for 99 years or something like that. It's some crazy amount, right? So we've kind of seen the world rolling towards this for some time now. It gets scarier, when we talk about devices like this, where it's like, well, now they have a view into our home, into our personal lives, outside of our homes, any sounds that they can pick up, any data they can pick up, any biometrics that they could possibly pick up from our faces, right? I don't know if you subscribe to this, but I do have the capability of like Google to alert and recognize faces. And so if there's somebody at my doorbell and they ring the doorbell, it'll say, your sister's at the front door, or whoever's at the front door.
And you totally told them that you totally told
And
them
yeah,
that it was your
I
sister,
let him
right?
do it. This is my fault.
Well, I
And
I'm actually
so
kinda joking there because 'cause I've seen it happen where people haven't told them who that is. Like my
I
mother-in-law, yeah,
see.
my
Oh, okay.
mother-in-law will get notices, at least she did because she has a Google Ring bell, a doorbell, and it'll say, "Such and such person is here," and so forth, and she's like, "I don't recall ever telling them that's who that is." So,
Yeah, that's really
which,
interesting.
well, would make sense for an organization like Google because they can pull information from so many different. Google's not just Google, right? It's Alphabet, and it has a lot of different ways in which you can pull data to correlate.
Right. And so, yeah, that's a really good point. And this a good segue into kind of what I'm going to talk about next, which is we have these agreement and the idea that I think a lot of consumers have is like, well, I have an agreement with Google. And yeah, I didn't read the whole 150-page agreement, but basically what I put it into ChatGPT, and basically what it says is they can have the right to do this, they don't have the right to do that, they do have the right to do that. Great, fine. What happens if Google goes out of business, right? And we've seen this before with 23andMe, where now whoever the highest bidder is gets access to that data now. And they can, doesn't matter what your T's and C's were with the company who originally, who you originally had agreement with, doesn't matter anymore. Now the new company can do whatever they want with that data. They can sell it to whoever they want. They can use it to make a crazy super weapon, or whatever it is that they would use it
And in
for,
a lot of
right?
cases, users agree to this when they use the service too. And I think it speaks to a bit of a frustrating dynamic there because you can go and buy a camera, you can subscribe to a service, and you have to agree to these legal terms that are so expansive. And the alternative is, well, or don't don't use it, right? Which
Just don't use
is
it.
an option, but usually once people have gotten to the point of purchasing all these cameras, they've already decided they're going to use it. And then they're presented
Right.
with the subscription requirements that, well, okay, I'm already invested here. And I think that's what's interesting there because it then gets to the bigger point of data retention, right? There's a lot of data detention here because the longer your camera remembers information, it's almost the bigger the problem becomes, right?
Right. Yeah.
There are a lot of different, I took some time before the show. There's a lot of different data retention agreements and requirements for different companies and different services. And the reason I think it's interesting and worth discussing is because in a lot of these capabilities, a lot of these apps, you're presented with a GUI. you have this interface, and one of the buttons is delete, right? Delete this video, delete that video. But it's almost as if it's tricking you, right? Because if you look closely, some of them will say mark for deletion and things along those lines. And if you look at actually the terms, it just means you no longer have access to that information. The data can still be retained. And for a lot of different, and in case some good reasons, the one that's really interesting that's been in the spotlight lately, which we'll dig a little bit deeper in here shortly, is Ring. And Ring states, I've got it right here, event videos stored in the cloud can be stored up to 180 days. And changing the storage duration only really affects recording beyond that. As far as deletion, Ring's privacy notice states that if you delete recordings, it can take up to 72 hours to remove them. However, there is a process in order to keep them stored longer if there is a situation with law enforcement, which again, we'll discuss
Yeah.
there. But
Yep.
what I want to focus in on now and get your opinion on is, what are your thoughts on these GUIs, right? Where you can feel a level of confidence where you've quote unquote deleted something, right? But it's not actually deleted. I mean, I think it's a little bit misleading. Do you think there's a use case for it that's, not misleading, or is there I'm struggling to find good ideas of why deleting doesn't delete in this case.
Yeah, I like this, and I actually want to rewind a little bit, just because I know we have some folks who watch the show, who listen, who actually are either trying to break into cybersecurity, or maybe don't have a full understanding of a lot of things that we said. And we've said a lot of words so far. So I just want to go back real quick and talk about data retention first of all. So data
Right.
retention is how long an organization or somebody is going to keep your data. It's exactly what it sounds like. Most organizations have a policy around this, saying, hey, after you leave, we're going to delete your data after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, whatever it is, 180 days, whatever it is. And so companies have these policies, and they're supposed to share that with you, and it's supposed to be publicly available for organizations like this. So you should be able to go on the Ring's website and look up their policies, and you should be able to find a data retention policy on there for you to be able to review before you purchase. That's how that works, right? So that's what we mean when we say data retention. It's usually an internal policy that an organization has for how long they're going to keep your data around, or any data around, really, right? The second thing, we keep saying GUI, graphical user interface, right? So what we're looking at on what you guys are watching us on right now is a graphical user
I
interface.
hope, unless you figured out some way not to. We say that the listeners aren't watching us through a GUI, but they used a GUI to get to us to listen.
Yep.
So there you go.
That's right. Anything that you point and click with mouse, or point and touch with finger, right? That's a graphical user interface is what we're talking about. It's kind of an antiquated term now, because everything's a graphical user interface. There are very few people who still jump into the command line, or CLI as we call it in the biz, but it still does happen especially in cybersecurity, it happens on a regular basis where we are jumping into those tools. So real quick, just wanted to level set with that and talk about, some of the terminology that we might be using that's like,
Yeah, basically in this modern era, if you didn't use a GUI to access us or see us, you're probably hallucinating. There's a strong chance you are. And first, I'm very flattered that you're hallucinating about me.
yeah,
it's a high
yeah,
compliment.
please,
But also, go to a
whatever it is
doctor.
you took to hallucinate, please send it to us.
Yeah, please go to the doctor. If you're seeing
Please
us
go to the
and you
doctor.
didn't use a GUI to access this, go to a doctor.
This is the difference between Frank and I. I'm trying to get the drugs, and he's trying to tell you to go to the doctor to get different drugs.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So back back to your original question, which was,
How do you feel about
wow.
these GUIs that are in the? I'm going to use the word insinuating at this point. How do you feel about these GUIs that are insinuating that there's deletion and it's final,
Yeah,
but in reality it's not?
absolutely. And this goes right into something that we've known in cybersecurity for a long time, which is, if you delete a file, even off of a hard drive, it ain't gone, right? Unless you have some very specific tools, unless you're doing some very specific things, which most users are not, right? And I think most users kind of know this now. Most, laymen kind of understand, laymen and women kind of understand that when you delete something off of a hard drive, that doesn't necessarily mean it's gone. When you delete something off of your phone, that doesn't necessarily mean it's gone.
Yeah, we're
There are
experts in
forensic
getting it
capabilities.
back. In fact,
That's right. That's right. We have run, the national level recovery tests.
one of my favorite things that we used to do, because Dustin and I have taught a lot of courses, is we would have our students go out, we'd give them a small stipend and have them go out and buy used hard drives from like
The
computer
most
recycling
dangerous thing we
places.
could have
Yeah,
done.
it was a bad idea probably at the time. And then we would have them buy these, cleaned hard drives that were that were used, which, by the way, unless you do a complete bit by bit deletion, right? It's not all deleted.
That's right.
And we would have them buy these hard drives and see what was on it. And we only did it like once because we realized real quickly, oh, we can't control what we might find here.
That's
And
right.
we don't want to have to call the police and create a whole situation there because we'd pull up some photos and stuff like that. And by the grace of God, we lucked out that time. And it was like a
Yes, we
business,
did.
it was like some business's media like account thing. It was very
Yeah,
super boring, but it gave you a really good idea real
very
quick of like,
innocuous.
oh, maybe we just lucked out and maybe we shouldn't do this again. So whenever we taught classes on how to do data restoration and data retrieval after that, we did not have them buy those, but it was fun that
Yeah.
one time.
Right. And but I think this is important too because you don't need to have an electron microscope or some kind of lab setup in order to do this. There are open source tools that will go in and do you anybody anywhere can download this tool, the specific forensics tools for free and run them for free with plenty of documentation on how to use it if you've never used it before in order to recover data, which is great, right? But it's also bad because it means that, anybody anywhere can recover any data from anything. As Frank mentioned, there are, ways to kind of go in and you have to, I think I can't remember what the NSA standard is. I think it's like 5 times writing
I think
over with
DoD is seven times,
encrypting
right? Bit by
7
bit. I
times.
think
That's
it's seven. I have seven in my
so
head, but that doesn't mean I'm right.
yeah, it's either 5 or 7. Anyway, it might have gone up by now. I don't know. There's also crypto shredding. There's all these different kind of fancy things that we can do nowadays in order to make sure that this doesn't happen. Even then, sometimes things are recoverable though. So that's really important for you guys to know. It's really important for everybody
In
to know,
fact,
right? As users are,
to your point, Dustin, it
yeah,
really lends a lot of credence to deletion's fine, but if you really want to make it inaccessible in the future,
right.
non-recoverable, encrypt it. Just overly encrypt it with a really strong password, and then you can go from there. In fact, if you
And
really
delete the
encrypt
key.
something and then delete it, oh man, then you've really got because yes, the data will still be there, but it'll be encrypted and it'll be of no use to anyone. It
Right.
makes it a lot harder to retrieve.
Right, and crypto shredding specifically is when you have a key, obviously, to unlock those files because of the way that bit for bit encrypting has to happen on a hard drive. It has to be quicker decryption than anything that we can possibly do with, better encryption algorithms. So there is a key somewhere. So if you delete that key, it's gone, and there's no way to unlock that data ever. Now, that's dangerous because if you delete that key accidentally,
It's
then
gone.
I don't have your data anymore. So anyway, so how this plays into what we're talking about today is we've been here before. Like this is not new to anybody in cybersecurity. We've been in the position where we've deleted things, but we know that they're not truly gone, right? We might not see them or have access to them, but it's still there somewhere. And so
It
I
is.
think for cybersecurity folks, like we already think in this kind of, in this way where we're saying like, oh yeah, no, like of course the data is not gone. But to an end user who's not cybersecurity savvy or security savvy or data savvy or whatever any kind of savvy in that respect, it can be a shock, and it can you people will be like, oh my gosh, my data is still out there somewhere. Like how did they? And I'm sure we're going to talk about this, but how did
We
how
are.
did Ring still have that data even after it was deleted? And a lot of people are going to be like, well, thank God they did because it's led to some leads and they're
Hasn't
working on
hasn't
it.
found Savannah Guthrie's mom. Hasn't found that TV anchor's
Has
mom
not
yet.
No, no, it hasn't yet, but it is one of those things where any little piece of evidence
Can go a
can bring
distance.
forth, they can bring forth that final tick that will eventually get, a victim or survivor back to their family or home or wherever.
And I like that you phrase it that way. For clarification for everyone listening and or watching, Dustin and I are not saying that these are bad things. These are inherently not good or bad. The thing that we're trying to do is make you aware, right? So
Yes.
you can choose to take part in this process or not, because there are ways to use surveillance capabilities without taking part in this process, and we're going to discuss it. But the last thing I want to do is create some sense of paranoia for everyone,
Right.
because it's real easy to think to let this feed into other things like flock. One I'm more concerned about is the flock cameras that are up, right? Because you really have
Right.
no control, very little control over that, and the only way to change that is through a very difficult legislation process that you guys see how politics work slowly, right? Or not, or don't work depending where you live. I don't know what ours are doing right now, but separate from that, we don't want you to live in fear, because that's not the goal here. We want you to live informed, because there are ways to work with this. And it does bring me into the whole mentality aspect, because there's also this mentality that most people are just thinking about how hackers can hack into it, when really it's a lot more boring and more impactful. Because I say more boring and impactful because, one, it feels really cool. Like if a hacker's coming to get, no hackers are coming for you specifically, right? If you regular individual on the street find yourself where you've been hacked, it was probably part of something larger and more sweeping where they were going after low hanging fruit and you just happened to be something that was picked up. It's the same way the scammers work with the elderly here in the States. Scammers aren't having specific elderly people they're targeting and going after. They're calling all the old people to try and steal money from them. Okay. But when I say more impactful, the tools that are available for these organizations, such as contractors that you don't have any relationship with. These are contractors that work with companies like Ring and Google and so forth that can access this information.
Yes.
You can inadvertently turn it on. There's the neighbors capability that Ring has, where neighbors can share their videos between each other. And maybe you turn it on once and you forgot to turn it off. And there's these different feeds and portals. And then there's also the legal process, which I want to discuss as well. You've got situations where police put in requests, completely legal, to then pull information in the solving of the crimes that Dustin was talking about there. So while you feel like you might be in control of this data, know that you probably aren't, at least not to the extent you would like, most people would like, because then it creates something that I've heard called, what is it, the request economy, right? And this is basically safety. How do I want to put this? Safety marketing turns into privatized surveillance, I'd say. And there's no real public vote, which with a lot of privatized organizations, right? A company's doing it. Certain things that the government couldn't do, mass surveillance, companies can do because they get your
Yeah.
buy-in, right? And we're
Yep.
having this thing that's marketed as keeping you safe when really it's almost like I feel like half these companies should be paying us to feed it data into its surveillance systems, right? Because they're then selling
It's
that data
amazing.
again.
I constantly have that thought about specifically the Tesla self-driving, where you paid them either 10 grand up front or you're paying $100 a month or 200, whatever the cost is. And they're using your data to make their self-driving vehicles better. And so it is almost one of those things where it's like, what am I? It's like that, like when you think about like an evil genius sitting in a lair somewhere and they're like, not only will we take their data, but they will pay us and we will take their data. Like it
Exactly.
feels like that. And I know it's not like, look, CEOs and board members out there, I understand it's not exactly what's going on. I don't think that you guys are all evil people, but it does feel like that to an end user who's thinking about these types of things. And they're like, why am I doing it? Like when it's something you pay for, right? And when we've seen this in a couple of lawsuits where there's been some discoveries that have happened, and the users, the people were able to kind of countersue and say, well, I'm paying for this service. Why are you taking all my data, and why are you doing all the selling all this data, and why are you doing all this stuff with it? And so we have seen that argument happen in court, and I think that in favor of the users is what's happened. And so of course the tech lawyers have gotten savvier, and so they write say specific verbiage into stuff like that. It's like, oh well, doesn't you can't countersue, and we're using your data no matter what. And again, it is one of those things where it's like, well, fine, then opt out of it. And then it's like, but then what? Then you can't participate in society in some aspects, right?
Right.
And that's hard.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating in that sense because you do want to participate in society. And the argument that's out there is, well, there's other options, right? You don't have to use these services. And they are correct. There are surveillance systems that are out there. Believe it or not, surveillance systems existed before cloud companies did. Right? You can store information locally on your own server. You can even make an app or use an app that'll access that data so that it's all staying locally when you can still bring it to your phone. The one that comes to mind is Reolink. Reolink it provides options where you can have your own server specifically at home. You can have the data from their cameras that goes straight to that server and it lives there and it dies there and it's only accessible there, right? Which I think is a really good option. I also like them because they build PoE cameras. For those that don't know, that's power over Ethernet. It's where you can send power through an Ethernet port as well. So data and power in the same one. You only have one cable that goes into your camera in that regard. It provides consistent power and consistent data streams compared to wireless. You can do that. You can do all of this. But how many of you knew about Reolink before this, right? And how much does the average person know? The average person knows Google, they know Amazon, some of them may know Wyze, right? And then Simply Safe. I'm reminded I've got a family member who, whenever I show them the technical stuff that you and I like to build, right? And how we do things around the house that like are technically cool, but also basic things to fix, they often respond with, well, I'm just going to pay someone to do that, right? It's like, I know they are capable of doing it. They can do it, but they're just, I'm just going to pay someone to do that. I don't want to do it. I'm like, I don't want to think about it. That mentality exists, and that's fair. That's fine.
Valid, for
It's
sure.
just in this
Yeah.
case, where if you're just paying someone to do something, you're just paying a subscription, cool. Know what the trade-off is. Know what the full trade-off is. And so as you're doing that, there's a couple, if you are going to still do those things, there's a few things to keep in mind that because there are a couple other risks. First, there's more, I don't know if you've seen this as well, there's more AI that's being put into this. And you brought it up a little bit with facial recognition is one of the big things, but I have also, and I'm such a sucker for it too. There's this one out there called Hup. Have you seen Hup? It is this camera that is connected to AI. And the whole goal is to point it ideally at all the different rooms in your house. It's going to, starting with that, great, right? Already, let's not
Okay.
be concerned.
Yeah.
But the whole goal is to give you reminders of tasks and chores you forgot to do or that need to get done that maybe you put to the back of your mind. So if you're walking around and it sees like, hey, you've got some free time. Hey, don't forget you got the laundry that you left in the other room. Oh, hey, the dishes, they still need to be, cleaned and stuff like that because it's recognizing dishes and laundry and whatnot. I love this idea because I forget my chores often. But I hate this idea because that's a lot of data that one is going somewhere and two could incorrectly, label things like the facial recognition we talked about. If it tells a cop who's made these legal requests to actually see who was doing what and say it sees a crime and the face is mislabeled, that's going to cause, even if they figure out, oh, this actually isn't the person who we thought who committed this crime, it's still going to create a wrinkle in someone's day, right? It's still going to be a
Yeah.
problem. Still a trip to the police station for no good reason, right? Except you were mislabeled as crime committer number one or something along those lines.
Yeah. So so once again, showcasing how different Frank and I are, I hate the idea of Hub. I hate that so much that something like the whole point of having IoT devices and having this stuff is to help with cognitive offloading so that you can focus on things that are
But we're
important
offloading
and so
too
you don't have to
much.
worry
We're
about them.
offloading chores. We forgot to think of them.
But then like I don't need something being like, "Hey, you forgot to do." I don't need that. I don't need that. That would make me so anxious. All I just get alerts on my phone that's like, "Hey, you forgot to do the dishes today, Dustin." I'd freaking hate that. I'd be so upset. Anyway, but you like it, and look,
Well,
there's a
I'm not
product out
buying
there.
it though. I have no idea.
Right?
Like
No,
I'm not. I think it's a startup. I'm not confident with data storage there. So
yeah, but great. Like, and I can see that this could work for some people. And you know what? It could help. Like, it could be like a capabilities thing where some people are just like have issues and they need something like that to kind of help them remind them to take care of themselves and to take care of their habitat and all that stuff. So that's I think that there's definitely use cases for it. I'm just saying I would hate it.
yeah, right.
So that's part one. And then yeah, this is tough because both you and I are early adopters of technology in a lot of ways. And I know one of the ways that both you and I are early adopters is we both have smart homes, right? So, every single light bulb in our house is, you can turn on and off with the sound you roll with a voice command, with, phone command, like whatever it would be, right? And so, there's been a lot of concern with that lately. The new Google stuff is interesting because it'll give you like a daily brief. So like I have some Google cameras, and so at the end of the day, it'll say, here's what happened around your house throughout the day. A person with a blue shirt walked out and got into a car. There was a child with them. If it
I'm
notices
looking at a
who like
person in
these
a blue
people
shirt
are,
right now.
I know. See, and if it facial recognizes, it'll just tell you the names. It'll be like Dustin walked out with you know his child. They'll say the child if the child's name is in there and the child's name is in there, and gets into the car and drives off and comes back and starts his day at work. And I even have like the Hub Max in my kitchen. So if I have the camera turned on there, it'll be like Dustin made dinner at 5:30. He made spaghetti. And like, you know what I mean? Like it gets that detailed and it's so interesting. But also you're like, all right, I'm gonna turn off my cameras on the inside because this is just too weird. It's just
Imagine if
freaks you
those
out.
get, and I have not seen any indication that this is the case, but imagine if those get compromised. There's basically like regular daily reporting on each individual.
on my on
Yeah.
my pattern of life.
Yeah. On your
Yeah.
pattern of life and what you do,
My POL is out there.
which is not to say that you do anything negative, but
Right.
it's
No, the
still in
pattern of life thing
existence.
is more about if somebody did want to target you, and again, nobody's trying to. I don't think anybody's trying to target me, but if
Yeah, we
somebody was
got we
trying
got
to
a few
target me,
emails where people think that they are being targeted at. And by the way, from last week's show, you're probably not. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah. No, I think that I think that's great to make sure we're quelling that idea, right?
Unless you're doing crime, because then maybe you are.
Right.
Don't do
And
crime.
if you yeah, don't do crime. And I know that's like a simple that's kind of like a reductive thing where it's like there are people who have legitimate concerns out there, right? And crime is in the United States at least it's becoming a very subjective
Objective?
term. Yeah, it's becoming a very
I mean,
subjective
we
term,
do have a
unfortunately.
technical felon as president, so definitely did
Right.
crime. So does it
And
pay?
yeah, does it pay? And then also, there are different, entities out there, law enforcement entities right now that are being told to ignore like constitutional rights and all that kind of stuff. So we're in a constitutional crisis in the United States. That being said, I think it is important to put what you're seeing as far as you being monitored into perspective and understanding that for the most part, this is mostly just companies who are trying to gather your data and trying to sell it because that's what companies in a capitalist society do. They create revenue streams. Data is a revenue stream now. Your personal data is a revenue stream now for them. And look, I'm not saying it's good, not saying it's bad. I'm just saying this is what it
It
is.
is.
This is the world we live in. And so just kind of keep that in mind that like if you do see like a drone flying around your house, maybe not surveilling you. It also might just be your neighbor who has a cool new drone that they want to try out, right? I mean, there's a million reasons as to why that would be happening.
Did you see the guy who went to jail for shooting a drone? It was on YouTube?
No,
Yeah, so
no.
this is kinda messed up. This is kinda messed up. So, there was this gentleman who saw a drone hovering over near his house, and he did not want that. I get that. I'd be a little weirded out if I just see suddenly a drone outside my house. Took matters into his own hands, shot the drone.
Love this. Yeah.
Cops were called. And they said, "Did you shoot that drone?" He goes, "I sure did." And they're like, "Wow, thanks. You're being really forthcoming." And he's like, "Why?" They're like, "Well, they're the owners of the drone are filing suit for destruction of property, and we're gonna have to arrest you now." And because there was also like discharge of weapon laws, I guess, and stuff. So there was other things as well that came into play. It was a Walmart delivery drone. He's like, "I saw that," and I don't know if you've seen them because they come and then they
Yes.
drop off boxes and stuff. He's like, "I saw and it dropped something off, and then it was floating over me. I shot it." And they're like, "Yeah, that was Walmart's, and they want to take action against you on top of it all." You know what's the most messed up thing? It wasn't even a real delivery. It was a staged delivery for, I guess, like a commercial or
A
something. It was a
commercial. Okay.
test delivery. So it wasn't even a real delivery that he stopped in this case. Straight to jail. Like the whole
Right
video
to jail.
is, and it was a rather short video because the cops were like, because the guy was like, "Oh yeah, I totally did that. That was me." And they're like, "Are
Well,
you
yeah.
You can even tell they're like, are you sure?" Like they're like, "We're recording. Are you sure you did?" "Yes, I did that." And so,
Love
yeah,
this.
yeah.
I I kind of on his side,
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I don't like the
but
term
it's
victimless
illegal. Okay.
crime. I don't like the term victimless
Yeah.
crime, but yeah, and there was no guarantee, like, if he missed where the bullet was gonna go and land, so I get that level, that part of the law. I don't think you should just discharge
Sure.
firearms, willy-nilly. That said, I feel like Walmart should have told him, "Hey, we're coming to film in your area, and we're gonna do deliveries," right? I think the last thing anyone would want is to be surprised by drones, both the drone flyer or the drone receiver or the drone seer. I don't
I'll be honest, if I saw a delivery drone or any kind of drone like come into my property and land, my first gut instinct would not be to go get a gun and shoot it. I would be very curious though, and I'd probably be stoked. I'd be like, "Oh, this is awesome. Where's it?" Like,
Yeah, I'd wanna know where it is and what it's doing. I don't know
yeah,
if I'd shoot it, though.
maybe I'm too trusting of drones in the sky, but I wouldn't be threatened. But if somebody is threatened by that, I get it.
Yeah.
And if it's on their
There
property, I
are
mean, I
drones in
guess no.
existence that do not deliver just packages, they deliver other payloads, so it's not like concerns are
Right.
unfounded. Like, talk to your local Ukrainian today for more, right?
Yeah.
They're dealing with those things left and right.
That's right. That's right, absolutely. We're just lucky enough to not be in a war zone at the moment, so I guess if I was in a war zone, then sure, I'd go get the gun and shoot the drone.
Yeah. So there are environments where I do think it's probably appropriate.
Absolutely. This is funny because, like, I am so on the I'm I wanna be on this guy's side, but I can see this from all perspectives, and I'm like, "Ah, yeah, you probably shouldn't have shot the drone, man." Like
Well, and it is interesting because there are devices that exist where you can actually safely have the drone land, but then they're
right.
they're made illegal, right? So you do have
Yeah.
tools that can block the frequency. But I want to say the law is like with the intent of it's all about intent, right? Because, and this is another true story, there was, I believe, a gentleman in Texas who is doing a lot of time right now in jail, in prison, because he got so upset with distracted drivers on their phones every day driving to work that in the back of his truck, he put up a bunch of block jammers and blockers. So every day
Yep.
when he drove to and from work, he'd turn them on so people's phones wouldn't work. And he's like, now they won't be distracted. And now I'm safer. I'm making this safe for everyone. Okay, we can debate whether you made it safe for everyone all day long,
Yeah.
but you
Yep.
were debating that in a federal prison at this point because the FCC,
My
and they
goodness.
got him. And I can't remember what the actual prison term was, but I read the term and I was like, oh, this was a message to everybody else. This isn't just
Yes.
like
No.
I mean, it was within the, it wasn't out of line, I guess, with the punishment options, right? But like the way they counted cases, like that dude's years and years in prison. So
Ugh.
it was definitely a
I can
message to
see it.
whoever was walking by, like, you can't do this again. Nobody can do this.
Oh
So
man.
it was.
Oh man.
But if there are steps on that note, sorry,
Yeah. No.
there
Yeah.
are steps you want to take today to have more control over your surveillance while still using these cameras, which again, I told you there's many options out there. If you want to get real fun, if like Dustin and myself, you want to get really weird and end up spending too much money on a solution that you make yourself, there are a lot of Raspberry Pi options where you can make
Yeah.
Pis into cameras. I will tell you the average Raspberry Pi 5 build kit right now, just to get table stakes to have everything you need to then get the camera and then put everything on there, will cost more than if you just bought a pre-made service or capability. Because I was looking at Pi prices the other day at Best Buy. I want to say the kits were between 120 and 150, and a lot of these cameras are
Okay.
like $30, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. But if you want to, you can build your own, and then you can maintain it yourself, and then you have all these other security problems, such as outdated Linux versions or
Yes.
unsupported Linux versions that then come down the line, creating a whole new cybersecurity concern. But they're yours that you did to yourself. That's how we
Yep.
live.
There you go.
But there's things you can do if you want to use these services. One, as always, we say make sure you have MFA on. MFA, yeah, it's for you, but it also, if you're sharing access or if someone's trying to access that your account without your permission, this doesn't take into account for Google or the legal things, legal requests, but think more along the lines of hackers. MFA, again, we're going to say MFA all day, every day, because it's a proven success story. So
And
that's,
it is a societal thing too, because you're not just protecting your own data on that platform. You could potentially be protecting everybody's data on that platform. And so, like, that's a good point, Frank. Like, good cyber hygiene amongst end users everywhere is like part of the societal agreement, right? Like, we're all going to do the best we can with the tools that we have to keep everything secure, but not just to keep our stuff secure, but also to keep our neighbors' stuff secure and the people who might be using that platform. Because who's to say that there isn't a flaw, vulnerability, something on the platform itself that allows for users to be able to go into, like, if someone hacks into your account, that they can't then pivot into somebody else's account or pivot into the system and grab everybody's stuff, right? So these are things that we deal with on a daily basis in cybersecurity, especially with penetration testing and vulnerability management. This is what we do. This is what we do. If anybody ever wants to know, like, what do you guys do throughout the day for proactive cybersecurity services, this is what we do. And so I just wanted to bring that up real quick. Sorry, I didn't
a
mean
lot
to
of money
interrupt.
to
Go
be
ahead.
made, kids, if you want to go around and tell people to turn on MFA all day.
There you go.
Oh, I
So
don't know.
real,
I
real
don't
quick.
know what qualifies as a lot, but hey, it's a living.
Yeah. um, One more quick thing that I also, if you like the idea of having home automation, but you don't like you don't want to subscribe to a cloud service or something, there are devices out there. Habitat comes to mind, which is like a at-home device that kind of has great community support. It does have cloud support, but you don't have to use it if you don't want to. It can do voice commands. It can control lights. It can control blinds. It can control anything in a smart home that you can think of. And so there are devices out there that have great community support. And also, yeah, I know we're going to do an episode on how we use AI, Frank,
Yeah. We
and like
decided we need to
literally,
make one about good things about AI.
yeah, we constantly bash it on this show, but there are great uses for it, and AI is one of those. This is a perfect use case for an LLM where it's like, hey, I want to, have surveillance around my house, or I want to have IoT devices in my house, but I don't want an organization to be able to have access to my data. What can I do? And it'll go out and it'll find all the different capabilities and say, I want community support. It'll say, hey, this has great community support. Here's what you can do. Here's how you can build it. Here are the instructions to build it. That's a great use case for something like an LLM or an AI.
Yeah. And in line with that, right? Other things you can do is this is one that I really like. Be mindful of where you're pointing your camera. And I know that
Mhm.
sounds silly, but the first thing people are like, well, no, I'm not going to put a camera in my bathroom. Also, that's not what I meant, but also don't put a camera
Nope.
in your bathroom.
Nobody thought you were gonna do that.
Think about what you really need. When you are surveilling the outside of your house, for example, do you really need to see the whole street? Do you really need to see everyone walking on the sidewalk? Or do you just need to
Right.
see the person walking up to your house or coming into your driveway? Right? If you don't create the data worth taking, no one's necessarily going to want it. Same thing like in your house. Be very selective if you're doing inside cameras of where you're pointing them, right? I like to use, for example, stairwells because everyone will think, oh, I should always be watching my family room or kitchen or something like that. It's like for security, really? Because if you're trying to see if someone's getting in, you want to see the doors inside and out,
Yeah.
right? And if they get into your house, you want to know which way they went. And that's usually hallways and stairwells. And I know it doesn't sound sexy, but it is very helpful information that can provide you more information than if it was just staring at your kitchen all day, right? So be very mindful in your placement. And when you establish the motion zones, what will trigger an actual recording as well. I have some blink cameras, and this is the one that drives me nuts all the time because it sees part of a tree line and waving leaves at certain times of the
Yes.
year will always cause things to record. And they're all nothing. I got a whole lot of nothing. Throw me up the wall. So just
I live in
be
Florida.
thoughtful.
Here's our thing all the time. Like, it's like we see an animal, and I'm like, "You do?" And I look, and it's a spider, and I'm like, "Okay, well, I mean, kind of an animal." It's not the kind of animal I was thinking of.
And
But anyway, sorry
no,
to
no, it's
interrupt
good.
you.
I've got a fox, and it happens too. That comes by the house. So, and
Well,
the
that's the kind of stuff I do want to see. I want to see a frog. Like, that's a cool
dude,
animal.
get the
Spiders are
bird feed.
everywhere.
There's a. Did I tell you about my bird feeder my wife got me? It's amazing. Now, this is cloud storage. I'm fine with because it's all just birds, right? But the feeder is called, and I will do a plug for it here, Bird Buddy, and it is a
Yes, I
little
have
yeah,
seen this.
yeah. It's a
Yeah,
birdhouse. I put food in it,
yeah,
and I got the little camera right there. So when the bird, you don't have to worry about if you look outside at the right time to see the birds. Now it takes little videos of the birds and then sends it to me. That
yeah.
those
I
nasty
love it.
squirrels. Hate those squirrels trying to get my bird food. Anyway,
I love that. I love that idea. I really wanted one.
it's totally
I
worth
was
it.
like,
It's something that I never would have bought for
okay.
myself, and it was a gift. So, and I'm glad.
Yeah, I think that's probably the part of it. Like, I'm like, I don't know if I want to spend this much money on like a bird
It
feeder
feels
for
silly.
my.
It does feel silly, but
Yeah.
it's lovely.
No, yeah, I love birds. Anyway, sorry. Go
And the
ahead.
final recommendation, Dustin, unless you have any additional ones that I would say is just go through your settings and make sure you're comfortable with all the different settings you have enabled. Like face, because a lot of things oftentimes are turned on automatically. Like I remember when I still had Ring, and maybe they've changed the policy, but Ring enabled it so that data video sharing was automatically enabled through their neighborhoods capability. And Ring got in
Mhm.
a lot of hot water this month with its Super Bowl commercials saying that we've created a whole neighborhood interconnected network where anybody can find lost dogs. And everyone was like, I don't think it's just lost dogs here, guys.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just lost dogs. And when you think about how, federal law enforcement or even local law enforcement can legally request information in their day to day processes, anyone who's been in Minnesota lately will tell you they get those requests. It might not be for lost dogs. So
Right.
make sure that to the extent you do have the ability to share, the information that if you're comfortable with it, then keep it on. But if you don't want this happening, make sure you look at your settings and just turn those off, right?
Yeah. And this is another good use for AI as well, is if you can't find those settings, you can ask ChatGPT like, "Hey,
Yeah.
where do I
What
need
do
to
I do?
go? Where are these settings at? How do I set these privacy settings up? Like, how do I make sure that I'm setting something up as privately as possible?" Note that you might lose some functionality in that as well. So, you won't be part of that large, neighborhood network. And if you're okay with that, then great, that's fine. But just know that there's going to usually be a trade-off with an organization. And this goes right back to what we were saying. I don't know. I don't remember how long ago this was, Frank, but I think we mentioned it where when you go on and you install like Windows 10, Windows 11, and you're first signing in, it gives you all these options. It's like, do you want us to be able to do this? Do you want us to? Do you want that? Do you want this functionality? My default is to say no to all of that. It's just to nope, we're not doing any of that because basically what's in the fine text there is we're going to be collecting data and sending it back to our servers about you. And I'm not okay with that on my main operating system that I'm using, right? If that is the main operating system I'm using, maybe I use Linux. You don't know. Anyway, but
I'm still on Unix. What?
there you go.
Talk about not using GUIs.
Frank is using Bell Labs Unix from 1971. So yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So it's oftentimes something that you have control over, something that you can work
Yes,
with, something that you
there
can,
are
to
settings.
an extent. Again, not complete control over, but to an extent. So keep those in mind as you move forward. Did I miss anything there, Dustin?
No, I mean, just it's again, it's us asking end users to pay attention a little bit more to what it is they're agreeing to. And I know that sometimes it's a pain in the ass when you're trying to install something and you're like, I just got to get through, I just got to install it, I just got to get through it. I agree, I agree, I agree, I agree. So easy to get into that habit and get that, but habit is what causes a lot of issues within
Yeah.
cybersecurity.
Honestly, say no up front, and then if you want the feature later, you'll find it. You'll figure it
And
out and
turn it
turn it
back
on.
on. They'll let you.
Yeah.
They'll be more than happy to say, yeah, please turn this on. That's how we we get paid on other revenue streams, right? So yeah, just paying attention, making sure that that you're cognizant of like what's going on around you digitally, right? Because we're living in this digital world now. We have two worlds that we live in. We have a digital world and a real world, right? And usually a lot of us are one kind of detracts from the other, right? Some of us aren't paying attention to our physical world because we're in our digital world. Right? But paying attention just as much as you should be paying attention in the physical world to things around you, looking both ways before you cross the street. All of the things we learned in kindergarten, right? Washing our hands properly, practicing good hygiene. This is all stuff that we need to do in our digital world too, right? We need to make sure that we're practicing good digital hygiene. We need to make sure that we're looking at things before we agree to them. And again, I understand that it's long and there's some arduous stuff. Another great use for AI. Plug the T's and C's into
Put it right in
AI and say
AI,
anything
and
I need to be concerned about here, and then away you go. And I know a lot of people are out there like, yeah, yeah, but isn't the AI then watching us? And aren't we agreeing to things with
also
AI?
yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely you are. Yep.
Anyway, until next week, where we scare you a little bit more, but unintentionally, because we're trying to tell you we're not trying to scare you. Thanks for listening. Tell us in the comments, what are your concerns here? Do you
Yeah.
know of any services that make you uniquely discomforted, right? We want to hear from you guys as well. We appreciate the comments, the fan mail. We read all the comments. We read all the fan
Absolutely.
mail. So, keep them coming. We love seeing them. Until then, until next week, though, what do we say, Dustin?
Keep on cybering.
Keep on cybering.